How's it going, Eliminators? Today we're going to be finishing up some work on the Columbia CR30 that you saw in last week's video. So let's get right into it. So I'm working on the Columbia here still. Now this thing is 2.5 months old and it runs rough. I'll fire it up and let you hear for yourself how it sounds. So this one doesn't have a choke. On the Cub Cadet models, the CC30, you push this all the way forward and it has a manual choke. On this one it just has a high and a low speed, and it has an auto choke that's run by like an air vane type choke. So we're gonna go ahead and fire this thing up. You guys can hear how it's running real rough. Now I popped the air filter off just so that I can come over here with my fingers and block this hole a little bit, and it ran even worse. So I know that it's running rich, and an engine normally doesn't run rich on its own unless you have a leaky needle valve. The carburetor isn't overflowing, and we do have a fuel shutoff solenoid here. I know that's all working properly, but we noticed that there was a little bit of insulation coming out from underneath the top engine cover. It's plastic. So I went ahead and removed this top little plastic piece, the orange piece. There's two 10mm bolts right there. Remove that, and then you simply flip it up and pull it out of these little slots right there. There's a 10mm nut right there and a 10mm bolt that goes in here. So this is the issue, guys. See all that insulation in there? So there's a mouse nest, and you want to know what that is right there? That's your choke. So what's happening is, here's our choke lever, right? It's supposed to be on choke, and then as it runs, it's supposed to take itself off a choke. Well, it's not taking itself off a choke because it's getting caught up on all the insulation that the mice put in there. So this thing is always on choke, so I'm also guessing that the spark plug is really fouled as well. Okay, so a little update. You cannot remove that without having to at least lift this up a bit. These little tabs here, super simple to pull off. You just get yourself, there is a tool, but I just like to use a pair of needle nose pliers. You pull out the centerpiece, and then you could go ahead and pop out this piece here. That should just pull right out like that. And then you're gonna wanna do that for 1, 2, 3, 4. I should be able to lift it up enough just to get this black shroud out. And now that all of our tabs are removed, we can lift this orange piece up a bit, and we can see there are 2 more 10mm nuts on top of that. So I'm going to get those off. So with this loose now, we can already start to see all the hair and insulation coming out of this thing. So we're just going to lift up and check that out, guys. We're going to clean all that up, and look at what's happened to our choke lever here. See that? And when your engine heats up, that opens that up, which then either pushes or pulls on the rod there, and that's supposed to disengage your choke lever. So that's all that's happening here, is that the choke lever is simply not disengaging because there's all of this hair and insulation from the mice. So I'm going to put on a pair of gloves. You guys can see it's all near the flywheel too. He's lucky that they didn't eat the coil. They're known for doing that. So we'll go ahead and get all this cleaned up, and I'll bring you back. So I got most of the insulation out. There is still some packed tightly into the cooling fins. So this is another reason why you guys want to make sure that you put mouse trap, because you don't want this to happen. You're going to have issues like this. You're going to have them eat a coil wire, and you're not going to have any spark, and you're going to have to tear this apart. But let's say that they didn't affect the choke, and let's say they didn't eat the coil wire. This engine would have been running hot because of all that insulation over top of these cooling fins. So to get in some of these harder to reach areas, I'm just using a pair of bent forceps here. And I'm taking that and I'm putting it into a box that I have, so you guys can see already just how much stuff we're pulling out of there. It's quite a bit. The mice will literally strip this stuff from your walls and bring it back into a nice little cozy area that they can nest. And it is currently September. The mice were getting ready to hunker down for the fall time here, and they were building this. And my customer said he just started having these issues. Now you guys want to avoid against using a compressor unless you're using a respirator, some kind of a face mask, and you're in a well ventilated area, because breathing in fiberglass insulation is not good. But now that we have the insulation out of there, you're going to notice that here's our little air vane type choke, and with all of the insulation gone, that moves freely. So that goes into the open position like that. And again, as your engine heats up, it's going to open that as well, and it's going to keep it open. So this is your primary, so that as soon as your engine starts, it starts pushing it back, and then as soon as your engine heats up, it opens it up all the way full. So I should be able to just put this cover back on top like that and then fire it up like this. I will put the air filter back on because there may be a little bit of loose insulation sitting around there. So with all of that stuff cleaned out, let's try to fire this thing up and see how it sounds. So that was the major issue, guys. Bunch of insulation and mouse fur was jamming up the choke lever there. That was causing the engine to run rich because it was getting less air and more fuel. So I removed quite a bit. You guys can see there, that is quite a bit. I'm going to keep that and show it to my customer so he can see what I did. They can also watch the videos, which is pretty cool. I always like being able to tell my customer, hey, you can go on YouTube and check out a video of me fixing your machine. So first thing I'm going to do, put the 10mm nuts, the 3 of them, back onto that top cover, and the bolt that goes right in there. Everything is 10mm, by the way, so it makes it easy. And as for these little clips here, simply line up the hole and then just pop them back into place. Then go ahead and line up the pin and pop that into place as well. And then for this rear piece here, we're just going to line up the tabs, pop that in, and then there's 2 10mm coarse threaded bolts that go up under that bar there. Apart from that, I went ahead and installed the new spring. That's straightforward as well. We had to run a couple washers because I think what happened was over time he kept using this thing and it wore out the bushing that goes on that bolt. So basically that bracket rides on a bushing and then the bolt goes through the bushing, and it just kind of wore out so that there was a lot of sideways play. Now there's no movement left or right, only up or down. See that? And that's what you wanted. So we went and just put a couple washers in there. That was straightforward. But this little bar that comes out here was broken off. There's a little piece that comes out here and it's supposed to go all the way back. Once you raise your deck up, that bar that hangs off of the back here, it's going to level out this idler bracket. So we're just going to go ahead and replace that. And that's the piece right there, guys. So that slides into the bracket and then that's where it bolts. But we can see that it just completely sheared off. So as soon as that comes in, I'll put that on, and that should take care of the belt slipping off, because we did have a brand new deck belt on there that the customer supplied us with. And like always, guys, part numbers are going to be in the description down below. Okay, so I got the arm in. You guys can see that is what it's supposed to look like. And that is all we had on this little Columbia here. It's super simple. All you do is pop it into the little groove and then thread in your bolt. So I have the deck in the number 3 position, and you guys can see that with the arm installed, it's just gonna roll up against that arm that goes all the way across there, that silver one. And that piece of plastic is a slider so that it doesn't grab, so that it slides freely. And as you move your deck up and down, that little arm just presses up against this piece here, and it just adjusts your upward angle, just like that, guys. So that'll always be moving, and you don't have to worry about damaging anything, because as you go to engage your blade, your idler is going to move left and right. So that is why they have that little plastic end on it, to allow it to kind of slide left and right and go up and down nice and easily. So that pretty much wraps up the Columbia CR30 repair that I had to do. The deck went back on, really simple. There's only 3 spots that it connects to, 1 in the center and 2 on the sides with little cotter pins. I didn't even film that part because it really is so simple. I can lower the deck here, and I'll show you a little modification that I did as well. On this Columbia, the pin was hitting the frame. See how close it is to the bottom? So up here, it was hitting the frame, so I went with a carbide bit on my die grinder and I ground that out, because what happens is on this, you have to push your bar inwards to get it to come up, right? So what was happening, and my customer said he would push over and from 5th it wouldn't go into 4th, but once he hit it and got it into 4th, then it would go 4th to 1st, no problem. So what was happening was every time he would come in like that, you guys see that? And that's from the factory. Like, I don't know what's going on there, but now it goes up and down nice and easily. So I just simply took the die grinder with a nice carbide bit notched out that section of the frame, and that was a simple fix. So that's it for today's video. We were able to get the Columbia CR30 back up and running again. The new deck belt was installed, and that was supplied by the customer. I was able to get the spring and that little arm reinstalled as well. And we were also able to solve the carburetor running rich. That was just a case of the choke lever being stuck. So if you guys enjoyed the video, think about leaving me a thumbs up. You know, it really helps me out. You can click here to subscribe and click over here to watch one of my previous videos. I upload every single week, so be sure to stop on by next week. Check the channel out for new content. And as always, guys, thanks for watching.